Hi all, welcome to the final video in the review series looking at the natural hazards topic. Now in this video we're going to finish off by looking at tropical storms, how they're formed, their impacts, and we're going to be looking at our Hurricane Katrina case study. So to start with, how tropical storms are formed. Now if we have a look at this diagram, you've got things that are similar in the notes, but realistically this just runs through everything that we need it to. Now, to start us off, our first main point with tropical storms is the heat that we need in the oceans. Now, all tropical storms form over oceans. We don't have any other bodies of water that are large enough to allow a tropical storm to form. But tropical storms need warm water, and the water needs to be heated to depth. It can't just be, the top metre of water that's warm enough. Now, the temperature that we're talking about is 26.5 degrees Celsius. This diagram that I have happens to have 80 degrees Fahrenheit as well. But the reason that we need this is because with the water being warm, it provides energy for the storm itself. It also will allow it to evaporate that much more quickly, and this allows the storm to gain energy quickly. So we've got wind blowing into the area, along with the evaporation of this water, and that forces the air upwards, and the air rises, pretty rapidly. So this air rises. As it does, it starts to cool, and then it's going to start to cycle its way back down to Earth. If we think all the way back to the first video, when we talked about convection currents in the Earth's mantle, it's a similar kind of pattern that we're looking at. So we've got, our area of warmth here. We've also got, obviously, the sun pushing energy down onto us, causing this air to rise along with a lot of water vapour. As it rises, it cools, condenses into clouds, and it starts to fall back down to Earth. So this air, as it's falling down, it's going to be condensing. We're going to have lots of clouds being formed. I mean, it is a storm, it's categorised by having lots and lots of clouds. So that's where these come from. Then our last kind of bit here is we've got just normal winds that we see in areas which are prone to tropical storms will move the storm. Now this works in addition to the rotation of the Earth. The Coriolis effect, which helps generate our storms into spirals. If you ever look at satellite images of tropical storms when they're happening, you can see that they're all spiral shaped, and this is why. Now, all of this stuff kind of put together helps us with a couple of factors that we need to remember with tropical storms, hurricanes, etc. One, the heat is really the biggest thing. We need warm water, and that limits where we can get tropical storms. It's a bit of a bugbear of mine. The Met Office does have a bit of a bad habit sometimes of saying that we're going to have hurricanes, or maybe it's unfair to blame the Met Office, but certainly newspapers will say that in the UK we're going to see a hurricane coming, and it's just not true. We get bad storms, but hurricanes only form between the tropics. These hurricanes will then move towards, they don't have to move towards land, but most of them, thanks to just where the continents are, wind up moving towards land, and as they move either over land or over colder water, they start to lose energy and they dissipate, and then they get downgraded from tropical storms to just depressions, which is something that we'll talk more about in the weather unit, and then eventually they vanish altogether. Now, it's important to remember that when we're talking about hurricanes, we are talking about extremely large, powerful weather systems. I mean, we are talking not maximum speeds, but we are talking wind speeds going up to the region of 250 miles an hour. These storms can become powerful enough when we get up to Category 5 storms to wipe towns clean away. You associate this with storm surges, which there's diagrams that explain in the notes. But you associate this with storm surges, huge amounts of water rushing inland, creating a lot of flooding and a lot of issues with that. They are hugely powerful. They can be extremely large as well. Tropical storms can be hundreds of kilometres across, and they are very, very dangerous. Now, our case study for this is Hurricane Katrina. So if we move on, it's the same kind of idea that we've looked at the last couple of times. So we look at what caused the storm, what are the impacts of it, and what response was there to it. Now, with Hurricane Katrina, in terms of causes, it's in an area that's very, very prone to hurricanes. Hurricane Katrina was generated in the mid-Atlantic. It blew into the Gulf of Mexico and then proceeded north into the US. There isn't really a huge set of causes that don't go back to the previous slide and just how a hurricane is physically formed. If we think about impacts, it's the same split that we've used before. It's also worth remembering, I keep saying this, but these factors, you can move some of them about depending on how you're justifying them. This is the kind of stuff, as I've said before, it's very, very common that for this to come up as an exam question. So it's important that we remember that you can move these about to suit the question that you've been asked. But, socially, 1,833 killed, 1 million made homeless, a million homes destroyed and resulting in homelessness, a lack of clean water, looting, there was the outbreak for a cholera, there was the potential, for a cholera outbreak, all of this stuff, very obvious social things. A couple of the ones that are maybe slightly less obvious, the I-1 Twin Snap Bridge collapsed. Big impact either, again, economically, it needs to be rebuilt, it costs money, or socially, that has an impact on whether or not people can effectively escape. It's a big deal. Lack of insurance afterwards. Now we are fairly fortunate in the UK that we don't live in areas where we have to worry about these things. But if you do, you will find there are insurance companies out there that will help to cover you in case it happens and you've got a loss of your property, things like that, and they would then pay for the damage. After this, some people found it very, very difficult to get these types of insurance policies. That has an impact on whether or not people will choose to live in these areas. Now, economic stuff, the oyster industry, very, very lucrative industry in the area, was badly affected. This thing cost $80 billion worth of damage. It's the costliest disaster in US history. Other ones, linking into the lack of insurance and stuff like that, only 66%, 2/3 of the people returned to the area after 3 months. That means 1/3 of the people never bothered to move back. That has an impact on the economy in an area, how much money it can generate, the amount of work that can get done, etc. Last 2 points there, fairly obvious. It's about things, infrastructure that needs to be rebuilt, repaired, etc. Environmentally, huge oil spills, 7 million gallons of oil spilled in the region. Also an economic impact there. That's a lot of oil as a commodity. By spilling it, it's not being sold. But we've also, fragile coastal wetlands, suffering habitat loss, pelicans, turtles, etc. And literally, the storm surge in the area literally washed away big sections of the beach. That's a very literal environmental impact. Some of the environment was physically removed. Now, when we talk about response, I've changed up the way I've been showing this with this one, just thought this looked a little bit better. But again, we're talking about short term and long term. Short term, we were literally talking about, basics, food, water, medicine, get them in there. A point when you're talking about response and how effective it was, that 4 days, within 4 days, this is the USA we're talking about. This is the world's leading economy. It certainly, it was at the time. It still is. And that's a long time. That's a long time for a response to be launched, within your own borders. I know the USA is a big country, etc., but, FEMA, it was, it took a long time to get help to people who badly needed it. We also did other things, refrigerators as makeshift mortuaries. Huge issue with dead bodies. They are, if they're not properly cared for and put and stored correctly, the potential for disease is very, very high, which is obviously something that we need to avoid. Moving on, National Guard to help prevent looting, evacuate people, pumps to try and deal with some of the flooded areas. The Superdome, was used to try and house some of the people who couldn't or didn't evacuate, but even then, that was very badly overcrowded. And oddly, or you might think it odd, there was foreign aid. Foreign aid did go to the USA to help deal with this disaster. And a little example there that you can certainly use in exam answers. Kuwait gave $500 million in aid to try and help with the response. Now, longer term, and again, you need to remember, think, how can I talk about how effective this response has been? But some of it, is positive. You've got, right, 80% of homes in affluent areas rebuilt. Now, you can read into that in less affluent areas, the percentage of homes rebuilt is significantly lower, which certainly has an impact on what you would call whether or not the response has been effective or not. You've also got floodgates installed at the mouth of Lake Pontchartrain, levees rebuilt, repaired, flood defences enhanced, things like that. Also parks, open spaces built to add storage for floodwater. If you think about the difference between water running over concrete and water running over soil, the soil will soak up some water, and if nothing else, it would buy time for an evacuation to happen. And FEMA, issuing grants to people to help them recover, to help them get set back up. As I say, with response, most people are fairly critical of how the USA responded to Katrina. The response was slow in a lot of cases and quite confused, and longer term, wasn't judged to be particularly effective, given that it did happen in one of the world's wealthiest nations. Now, this marks the end of this series of videos on natural hazards. Now, I will kind of state again here, this has been a review series, so it's not been as in-depth as I might have went if we were doing it the other way around. But remember, you've got full notes on this. Please use these videos in addition to your notes. If there's any bits that you are confused on, you're not sure how things link together, please come and speak to me. And the next series of videos that we get will be looking back at Unit 2, and we'll talk more about them in class and how we're going to move forwards with them. Thank you very much, guys, and I'll speak to you soon.